Boy, I'll tell you fellers, sometimes my days go long. It's after midnight here. I just finished up recording the last Symptom podcast for this week, and it's not one to be missed. I think it turned out really good, and I address a slew of different topics, and I just think it's really good. Tell some stories, it's fun. So I wanted to get this daily orange slice out for Tillians. You know, it's not so much the message. A lot of times it's the editing, it's the uploading, it's doing all those things. Let's talk about here what my two epiphanies were in my own authentic recovery that led to me being the last symptom guide, me talking to you, all you folks, about all these things. These are two revelations that I had very early on. Remember, I was as unhealthy as anybody has ever been unhealthy. I was just talking to somebody earlier tonight, and they said, you know, I'm talking to you here, and I can't imagine that you were ridden with borderline personality disorder. I said, oh, that's because you're talking to me now. You never talked to me 10 years ago. I'm telling you, I was as crazy and as ate up with borderline personality disorder as much as anybody has ever been. I know it's hard for some folks to imagine that, but it's the truth. So my life was falling apart. Everything was falling apart. I was manic. I was crazy. I was in a panic, really, and consuming all the same misinformation that a lot of you folks have been exposed to. And I was talking to a therapist there in Arizona, and he sort of offhandedly said, feelings are never good or bad, right or wrong. They just are. Just as it's neither good or bad, right or wrong, that grass is green. Grass just is green. There's nothing good or bad about it. It just is. Now, somebody had probably said something to this effect to me before, and I don't know if I was simply worn down this time or my mind was in the right place. Probably a combination of all these things, including this person's personality type, just the kind of the way he was and the way he said this at the precise moment he said it. It miraculously broke through and hit me hard. I describe it as kind of like a fortress wall crumbling and sunlight coming through. Because when he said that, feelings aren't good or bad, right or wrong. In that moment, I realized that for as long as I could remember, I had been judging my feelings as good or bad, right or wrong. I did not know that about myself until he said that in that moment. And I looked inward and realized I do that. I feel bad for things I feel. Not for things I think and not for things I do, but for things I feel. There are things I feel which I judge as being bad. And when he said that to me, it's just like this huge realization washed over me. It was something that was so true about me that I just had never known before. It was something so obvious about myself that I just had never known before. That was a big deal because I realized, how could I not know this thing about myself? I'm me. How can there be this obvious thing that's right under my nose that I did not even know about myself like that? It was as if by feeling certain things, I had already committed some terrible secret wrong. And when I realized this, that I lived with that perspective, this one thing, the implications of it were simply enormous. I knew that I'd be chewing over that and readjusting my perspectives on many things for many, many years. I realized that for as long as I could remember, I had been judging my feelings as good or bad, right or wrong. And I don't mean that I felt bad for things I may have done, but rather I felt bad for things that I had felt, as if by feeling certain things, as if by feeling certain feelings, I had already committed some terrible secret wrong. Feelings aren't good or bad, right or wrong. Feeling isn't something we do. It's an experience that happens to us. It's no different than me walking outside without a coat on a winter night and feeling cold. Me feeling cold is not something I'm doing. It's me feeling cold is an experience that I'm having. So then feeling things, no matter what those feelings are, cannot possibly fit into a category of good or bad, right or wrong, if it's not something it's not something I'm doing. It's just something I'm experiencing. Many things can be used to classify me as a good person or a bad person, but my feelings never a factor in what determines this, no matter what those feelings are at any time. It was like a waterfall come crashing over top of me. It was like a waterfall came washing over my body, that realization. So I was still digesting this 2 days later. I was full of excitement and eager to interrogate this guy more, try to discover any more gems, when he hit me with the next huge epiphany by bringing up and then explaining the differences between guilt and shame. Do you know the differences between guilt and shame? Here's what I primarily learned that day. The second profound insight, which has helped me achieve and maintain an emotionally healthy life perspective ever since. Here's the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt says, Barnett, you did something shitty. You really did something shitty. Whereas shame says, Barnett, you're a piece of shit. That's why you did what you did, because you're such a piece of shit. Guilt is always healthy. It's always constructive. You see, it always focuses on the thing you did or you didn't do, and therefore you say, well, I can do that different. Shame is never healthy. It is never constructive, because the focus of it is on oneself. You're what the problem is. Are you ever going to not be you? So it's a lie, and it's a lie that is always non-constructive. Guilt says what I did was wrong. I got to do better next time. Shame says I myself am what is wrong. I'm defective. Why even try? No matter what I do, it won't change the fact that I am a piece of shit. A piece of shit that does good deeds is still a piece of shit. You know, I thought that I had lived my life with all these things that were causing me to feel guilt, when in reality I was burdened by shame, and it was destroying me. To make matters worse, here's the kicker. Here's why these two epiphanies worked so well together. Why me experiencing these two epiphanies back to back were so timely. The reason I felt all the shame that I felt, which I had always mistaken for guilt, was because I was cruelly, judgmentally critical of myself for my feelings. You remember, I was judging them as being something I was doing, something good or bad that I was doing. Then I thought, because I'm doing these bad things by feeling things, that I'm feeling guilt. And I wasn't. I wasn't feeling guilt. I was feeling shame. I was feeling shame for a thing that can't be good or bad, right or wrong. That's why these two epiphanies back to back changed my life. Bear in mind that all this had been going on inside of me for 35 years, deep in the background of my mind, with me entirely unaware, until right at the moment he said these things. Then I internally, deliberately took a look at myself in a genuine way, and I realized the phenomenon he was explaining were not just a fundamental, healthy approach to life, but that I had carried a distorted understanding of these things for my entire life, right under my nose, and I was completely blind to it. I'm me, and I didn't know me. I didn't know my own self. Well, this was huge. I often quote this quote by David McRaney from the book You Are Not So Smart. He says, the spell of highway hypnosis on a long trip is always broken. It always, when you take an exit into unfamiliar territory. The same is true in any other part of your life. These were the two epiphanies that led me to being Brian Barnett, the last symptom guy. I understand that, they probably are not going to have the same powerful effect on you that they had on me, because you're an individual. There will be other epiphanies that will have as powerful an effect on you. But that's how, that was the foundation there for my entire recovery. Up until that point, I was flailing about in the dark. Those two epiphanies centered me, and I began to really begin the journey of getting to know myself for real, which is the beginning of authentic recovery. Hopefully, you're on that path too.